What's up everyone, it's Sinistry, and today I am going to discuss Splatoon 3 and why I think it is not going to be taken seriously as a competitive esport. Personally, I think there are way too many things going against this game to be taken very seriously the way that other esports are, and I really don't even know if you could count Splatoon as an esport. I would love to see this game become super competitive and to see tournaments and possibly even get involved in the competitive scene, but I just don't think it's going to take off the way that Nintendo hopes. I have a few reasons why, so I will explain those in this video, but make sure to leave me a comment and let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you have any more insight to share. And also make sure to like and subscribe if you like Splatoon content, because I will be putting out tons more once the game releases. But now let's jump in and start with discussing the tick rate of Splatoon 3. So I am no tech-savvy person. I really did not understand tick rate, but I looked it up and I think I kind of get it now. Make sure to leave me a comment if I got anything wrong. I would really like to make sure I get this right for everybody. To explain tick rate, I have to explain a little bit about how lobbies are hosted within Splatoon. So basically, when you join a lobby of Splatoon, one of the players in the lobby will be the host, and their game is going to be the primary game that checks for input throughout all of the different games that are being hosted. So essentially, the host's game will send out little signals to each different console, and then each console will respond with the inputs that the player made within the last, X amount of time. As you can imagine, the more frequently that a console checks for these updates, the more accurate a game will be, and especially in a game like a shooter where things move quickly, this is really necessary. So the frequency of how quickly a console will check for the other inputs is called the tick rate. Most shooters have a tick rate between 30 to 60 hertz, but some actually go up to 120. Again, as you can imagine, the ones that are up, more toward 120, they are going to be the most accurate because there will be less room for errors and less room for things to be lost in the time between the checks. Keep in mind, the average is 30 to 60, but Splatoon 3's demo clocked in at about 16 hertz. This is super low, but it actually is on par with Splatoon 2. And oddly enough, Splatoon 1 actually had a higher tick rate of about 25 hertz. That means that Splatoon 1 actually would be more accurate than both Splatoon 2 and possibly Splatoon 3. Now this can play out in a couple of different tangible ways. Again, I'm just trying to explain this to the best of my knowledge, so if I get anything wrong, definitely correct me in the comments. But the first way is in not actually getting some splats that you should have gotten. From my understanding, if you are putting an input where you are supposed to splat someone and you get them right on, if they actually happen to move out of the way within that period of time between checks, then your splat may actually not count and it may be counted as like a dodge, or you actually may get a delayed splat. That's why sometimes when you splat someone, it actually shows up like a second later and it seems kind of weird and like it's out of sync. There also can be more reciprocal splats. So what I mean is, again, let's say that you hit someone square on and you know that you hit them and you know that they're getting splatted. Well, because the tick rate is slower, they actually have a longer period of time to hit you back. And sometimes that results in reciprocal splats that shouldn't exist. This is of course really frustrating because it doesn't really account for the skill of the players. It just is making things a lot easier for people who aren't as good at the game. And in a way, it's also kind of penalizing the people who are really good because you never know if your skill is actually going to result in the action that it should. Interestingly, I could see a potential issue in Splatoon 3 with the Squid roll. Because of the tick rate, I think that the Squid roll could either be super overpowered or super underpowered. It could be overpowered if there is a larger window of time for the Squid roll to actually take off, and therefore you could actually get Squid rolls that shouldn't really exist, like you shouldn't be able to deflect ink at a certain time. But on the other hand, you could actually do a Squid roll that then somehow is kind of negated and you still get inked and you still get splatted, so I don't really know how it'll play out, but I am very curious to see if the Squid roll really works in Splatoon 3. Now you might be wondering, why would Nintendo implement such a low tick rate if the standard is so much higher? Unfortunately, this has to do with the bandwidth issues that happen to come with a lot of Nintendo games. So again, I don't fully understand bandwidth and all of these like very technical things, but from my understanding, it kind of has to do with internet speeds and the quickness to which you can relay information from your console to someone else's. So essentially, if you have really good internet and your internet is always popping, it's always going at full speed, then the higher the tick rate, it doesn't really matter. Essentially, it's only going to benefit you because your internet is able to keep up, your console is able to deliver that information quickly, and you are good to go. However, if you have really spotty internet, or let's say that your Wi-Fi antenna within your Switch is not really doing so hot, you actually are still able to get a lot of inputs out and have less lag or like less missed actions and things like that. So from my understanding, this is kind of a dual issue. The first is that the Switch is maybe not as reliable as we would hope with the internet. Obviously, a lot has to do with the Wi-Fi. If you have an Ethernet connection, it should be a lot more reliable. But not everybody has an Ethernet setup, and you might not be one of those players who has like a really good way to connect the Ethernet to your Switch. It might just be like going across multiple rooms, or you might have your router on a different floor, so maybe it's just not feasible. In this case, you have to rely on Wi-Fi, which could end up being spotty, and that's why the lower tick rate is able to kind of make up for that issue. So in a way, this is a good thing because it allows the game to be played by more people who may have less, outstanding internet. Maybe they don't live in a place with great internet, so they're still able to play this game. However, for the sake of this video, we're talking about competitive Splatoon, and of course this is going to cause issues for people who want to play competitively. If you're allowing more casual players who have spotty internet and you're really catering to them, you are kind of taking away from the people who have good internet and who take this game very seriously. It's unfortunate, and I don't know if Nintendo has a way to really make everybody happy, but I do know that they have, so far from what we've seen, chosen to cater to the people with the worst internet. Now, that being said, there are still some more internet issues, so let's dive into the connection issues. If you played the Splatfest world premiere, then you will know that there were tons and tons and tons of connection errors and disconnects throughout the entire day. However, I don't think it's entirely the players' faults. I have really good internet. Like, it's not maybe the best in the entire world, but it's still really good, and I still encountered like tons and tons of these errors. I mean, probably like 15 of them at least. I've played other shooters, I've played other multiplayer games that aren't made by Nintendo, and I almost never have these kinds of issues unless my internet actually goes out for some reason. However, Nintendo always gives me issues, as they seem to give everybody issues, which tells me it's a Nintendo problem, not a, user internet kind of problem. I mean, just go look at Super Mario Maker 2. You actually cannot play that game online. It is so laggy, it is actually unplayable, and for some reason, Nintendo just doesn't seem to care. Now, I think if Splatoon is that bad, like if it continues the way that it was in the demo, then Nintendo actually may have some serious issues because people will not be able to play this $60 game. And that's really unfortunate because this game could be awesome, but I think Nintendo really needs to make sure that their network is up and running at full speed, that there are no issues, because they are really struggling as of what we saw. And in reality, if they decide not to change anything, they think that it's fine and dandy, then they are going to run into some serious issues with competitions. I mean, imagine if you went to a tournament and every 5 seconds someone disconnected, someone had a communication error, and it happened 10 times in a row. You're resetting that one match 10 times in a row. And that's totally feasible because people were running into issues all throughout the day during the Splatfest. There was a 12-hour period where people were running into issues from beginning to end, and that's just unacceptable. Additionally, I should point out, I've heard some people say that the Switch's like Wi-Fi antenna or Wi-Fi card, whatever it is, that it might be less than ideal. And I've also heard that the default settings when you set up an internet connection might actually be, again, less than ideal, which why would Nintendo make that the default? And I know I've been super negative on Nintendo for these 2 points, but honestly, I think they are kind of trying, but I think they just need to do better because they're just not keeping up with other games from other companies. And if they want to be taken seriously, they need to put in the serious time, effort, and money, and unfortunately, I just don't know if they're going to take it as seriously as we want. But that being said, there is one more issue that Nintendo does need to resolve if this game is going to be taken very seriously as an esport. That issue is the trolls, and we're talking specifically about Squid Partiers and people who join games just to go AFK because they think it's funny. Splatoon 3 is going to need a report function. Let's be completely honest. Nintendo can manage this pretty well by just giving people several warnings before they actually time them out or ban them. But this will help to avoid, chronic Squid Partiers who go in and ruin people's times and you don't know until a match is done. And if you decide you're going to disconnect, then you get the timeout, which is really irritating. So you're stuck wasting 3 minutes, or if you're in a ranked mode, 5 minutes of your life on this person who isn't even playing. However, let's say that you chronically report people because you're a bad sport and you're not good at the game and you get mad every time you lose. Well, Nintendo can actually cause you to get warnings or timeouts or bans if you are a chronic reporter. And let's say that they go back and they check some of the footage because, again, the games are going to be saved. So they can go back and they can check some of the footage if they notice, hey, you've submitted like 50 reports in the past couple days. What's going on? Well, if it looks like your games are going totally fine and you're just a bad sport, you're the one who gets punished. I think that's pretty fair. And I also think it's fair that if you get reported, you should be able to appeal it. I know that it's not going to be possible for Nintendo to go and manually review all of these things, so I'm not saying that, but I think it's pretty easy for them to set up a bot that can kind of like automatically handle some of these appeals. I don't know, maybe that's not a great system, maybe it's overly complex, but I do actually think there is one more way that they can help resolve this issue. So the other way that Nintendo could kind of help to resolve this issue is by putting a bare minimum participation limit. So let's say that you are a totally new player, you have no idea what you're doing, but you enter a turf war match. You just are kind of learning the controls, so you don't even fully know how to, shoot ink and do all of that stuff, but you eventually figure it out throughout the match and you end up racking up a decent number of points. It's totally feasible. You could get a couple hundred points. Maybe you get like 500, 600, something like that. However, if you're like a really little kid or you're just like not very coordinated, maybe you only get like 300 or 400 points. Or maybe you're the type of person who focuses on splatting people, so you don't actually get that many points because you're not turfing the ground all that much. I personally think that setting a limit at, let's say, 300 will kind of help avoid some of the AFK or Squid Party people, because ultimately what's frustrating about them is that they're not participating enough. So by having a minimum participation limit, you kind of effectively make them participate or get in trouble for not participating. I'm gonna say I have seen in Splatoon 2 over the past few days, there have been a couple of people who only score, 100, 150, 200 points, which is kind of ridiculous and goes to show that they're actively trying not to participate. So if Nintendo says, okay, we're gonna say anybody who doesn't score 300 points in a match, we will give them a warning, we will give them 2 warnings, we'll time them out, eventually we'll ban them if they do this frequently. That's a good way to help resolve this issue without, having to rely on a reporting system. And this is something very simple that they can implement. It's kind of, an additional step that they have to put into the coding, but it is something that is a lot easier than, having like a whole system where you have to do reviews and all of that stuff. Also, if you have any issues with this point, just keep in mind that just having bad internet and like disconnecting can actually get you timeouts anyway. So if something that's completely outside of your control can get you timeouts, something that's totally within your control, how much you participate, should definitely give you timeouts or bans if you are chronically not playing. I also think it's totally possible that you could appeal, like maybe when you get a ban, you don't get like a lifetime ban, you get like a 6-month ban, and then after that you can appeal and you can play the game again in 6 months when you've learned your lesson. And I also don't think that you should get a ban like after the 3rd or 4th time. I think it needs to be like, you've been doing this 25 different times in like a week. That shows that you're not really playing the game and you're ruining it for everyone. And obviously, I think Nintendo would give you warning and warning and warning and warning, so there's no reason why you wouldn't know that you're going to get banned. And again, you'll get timed out too before you get banned, so it's not like, you'll be permanently banned as a first result. You will get maybe a timeout for half an hour, maybe a timeout for a day, and ultimately you would get like maybe a 6-month ban. Or if you come back after a 6-month ban and you do it all over again, maybe you can't play the game anymore. It might sound harsh, but it really wastes people's time, and in a game like Splatoon, this isn't just a play however you want to play kind of game. You have an active goal, and how you play has a major effect on other people. So I don't think it's fair at all for people to be selfish and play in a stupid way when it really does have an impact. Now, to focus on a positive thing that Nintendo has done, they actually have started to crack down on cheaters within Splatoon 3. Specifically, the people who were trying to access the testing range before the demo was live and ready for everyone actually did get banned. I think Nintendo is going to take cheating very seriously in Splatoon 3, and I think that is so great of them. I am very happy because cheaters ruin games for everyone, just like Squid Partiers. Except Squid Partiers are probably like a lot of kids who just don't really know what they're doing, and cheaters are just bitter people who aren't good at the game. Personally, I don't see what you get out of either, so I'm really glad that Nintendo's going to crack down at least on the cheaters and maybe at some point on the Squid Partiers. Now, in conclusion, I do actually think that there are some things we can do to make sure Nintendo fixes these problems. If Nintendo sees that a lot of people are buying this game, there's a lot of support, but people are also very upset about these issues and they are speaking out, I think that they will have no choice but to listen. If you see any of these issues cropping up after Splatoon 3 comes out, make sure to make your voice heard. You can of course use social media like Twitter to try to reach Nintendo. You, I'm sure, can use like online forums to reach out to their support team. But you can also, make YouTube videos just like I'm kind of making now. You can, reach out to different content creators who have larger platforms and ask them to cover this. You can do all kinds of things to make your voice heard. The more that you speak up for the things that you actually care about, the more that Nintendo will have to listen. And the more press coverage that all of these issues get, the more that Nintendo will have to listen because it could affect their stocks, it could affect future sales, it could really affect a lot of different things, and they want to make sure that they have a good reputation. In addition, if Nintendo does try to make competitive work and maybe they hold tournaments and see these issues, I think they're going to have to fix them. There's really no way around it. If they actually see it for themselves, it's going to make them so embarrassed, I think, so they will have to make changes. In reality, I think that Nintendo will make changes if at all possible because they want to be successful. I can't promise they're going to increase the tick rate. I can't promise that they're going to, ban chronic Squid Partiers. I can't even promise that they're going to, catch every cheater. But in reality, I think that Nintendo will do as much as possible to make the game a good time for everybody and try to make it competitively viable. But that is everything I had to share for today. What do you think about these potential issues? Do you think that Splatoon 3 has any competitive viability? Do you think that it will be taken seriously by Nintendo, or do you think that the, cheater bans was just maybe a preemptive measure and Splatoon is not really going to get these issues fixed? Make sure to leave me a comment with all of your thoughts and opinions. And remember to like and subscribe if you like Splatoon content. Again, I'm going to be talking about it so much in the coming few weeks, and I'm super excited to put out this content for you. In addition, I'm going to be streaming the game a ton once it comes out, and I'll be streaming right here on YouTube, so just another reason to subscribe. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.